Hey, how is everyone tonight or this afternoon? Good. All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to the Institute of Politics Speaker Series event, The Congressional Legacy of Shirley Chisholm. My name is Samaya Span, and I'm a second year in the college from Long Island, New York, studying history with a minor in East Asian languages and civilizations. At UChicago, I serve as the co-social chair for the Organization of Black Students, am an active member of Women Plus in Law, and practice with the Taekwondo Club. I've been looking forward to this event for some time, as it serves as the perfect celebration following the end of Black History Month in February, and now Women's History Month, which is coming to a close. This afternoon, we are joined by two magnificent speakers, here to share their stories from careers spent in public service, as they carry on the legacy of Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman to be elected to Congress in 1968. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley was the first Black woman to be elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A lifelong activist who was raised here in Chicago, her legislative work focuses on various justice initiatives, including reproductive justice, immigrant rights, consumer protection, workers' rights, senior advocacy, support for survivors of sexual violence, justice for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals, and healing for those who have experienced trauma. Currently, Congresswoman Pressley serves on the House Committee on Financial Services and the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Former Senator Laphonza Butler is an American labor union official and politician who served as a United States Senator from California from 2023 to 2024. Her policy initiatives primarily focus on workers' rights, reproductive rights, racial and economic justice, LGBTQ+ rights, and expanding educational opportunities. Senator Butler also served as president of Service Employees International Union Local 2015, California's largest labor union, before she was named to the Senate. Moderating our discussion today is Dr. Anastasia Curwood, the Hallam Professor and Department Chair of History and Director of the Commonwealth Institute for Black Studies at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Curwood is also the author of the book, Shirley Chisholm, Champion of Black Feminist Power Politics. Some quick housekeeping before we begin. Please silence your phones. Second, when it's time for Q&A, a microphone will be placed in the audience. Please line up and remember that priority for the first questions will go to students. Finally, please make sure to check upcoming IOP events, including Class, Currency and Capital, Scott Galloway and David Axelrod in Conversation, which will take place on Tuesday, April 1st at 5:30 p.m. in Ida Noyes, and Is RFK Jr. Right About Our Food System? At 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 8th in Bond Chapel, featuring a star-studded panel of culinary, nutrition, and agricultural experts who will share their takes. You can register for both events on the IOP website. Now, please join me in welcoming to the stage Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, former Senator Laphonza Butler, and Dr. Anastasia Curwood.
I was literally going to bet Beyonce. Yeah.
Welcome. I'm so honored to be here. Shirley Chisholm is somebody who is a guiding star for us now and has constantly been reminding us, at least through those who are her descendants, of what is truly important in this democracy. And so I'm going to start with a question that connects all of us to her legacy, all of us here on stage. I remember where I was and when I heard about Shirley Chisholm. I was a very young girl and I heard about her from my parents. And so I would just like to start with my conversation partners here, to start by asking, can you remember the first time you heard of Shirley Chisholm? And if you do remember, when and where it was? And then, did knowing about her affect your ideas and your aspirations going forward?
Let me thank you all for being here. It is Friday afternoon. And I think it is actually supposed to be a nice, sunshiny day.
Thank you for being here. Happy Women's History Month. For every woman who is here, but also for every man who is standing in support of helping to continue to make women's history. Thank you all. I have no idea what the answer to your question is. I don't remember the first time that I learned of Mrs. Chisholm. I remember the first time that I took action in the name of Mrs. Chisholm. Maybe that could be responsive to the question. When Vice President Harris was running for president in 2019, there were a lot of members of her sort of consulting and advising team that was thinking a lot about what Mrs. Chisholm's run for the presidency meant, what it would mean for then Senator Harris to run for the presidency in the shadow of that legacy. I was, at the time, the president of the largest union in the state of California. I was fine. I didn't need a new assignment. But Senator Harris asked me to join her campaign team in the name of Mrs. Chisholm. And I remember just constantly being reminded of her sacrifice, of her tenacity, of her humility, of her moments of quiet grace that we all have subsequently learned about, whether it was being at the bedside of her opponent, who was a staunch racist, but showing us all, being that example for all of us. And I remember doing that for my daughter and in the name of Mrs. Chisholm.
It's good to be with y'all. I came here only to be with you, and did that with great intention at a moment where we're seeing such an erosion and unrelenting attacks and assaults on the gains that have been made, and I have made a defiant choice that you cannot have my joy too. And so I am here because I knew returning to Chicago, which is the city that raised me, for those who don't know that. As I say, Chicago's the city that raised me. Boston's the city that changed me. So it is. I know that's right. So it's good to be home. It's good to be home and to be in community with all of you. And I keep revisiting Dr. King's urgent question of where do we go from here, chaos or community? And it is so important that we are choosing community. And that's why I'm here, and that's why you're all here. So thank you. So growing up in Chicago, and growing up on the Chicago Defender, and being raised by a mother, my first coloring books that was actually produced by the Chicago Defender were images of kids saying "Nation Time" with Black solidarity fists raised. And I remember distinctly coloring the Black liberation flag. So I grew up in a household, your parent is your first teacher. Your parents are your first teachers. And I had two righteous teachers in my mother and also my father. He was cycling in and out of the criminal legal system because his substance use disorder was criminalized. And but he was still parenting me from behind the wall and informing my Black consciousness, sending me the poetry of Lorraine Hainsbury and plays and the words of Gwendolyn Brooks and Sonia Sanchez and Langston Hughes. And my mother, instead of reading me as a child bedtime stories about someone coming to save me, read me the speeches of Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm. And so my relationship, so I get it honest. So my relationship with Shirley Chisholm began early. So she was just in the recesses of my mind. And so it was incredible, to grow up in the city of Chicago. I saw female mayors and Jane Byrne. I worked at the age of 10 years old to elect the first Black mayor in the city at Harold Washington. And then I had the righteous role modeling and tutelage both from my parents, and Shirley was featured prominently within that.
First of all, I'd love to hear that, Senator, you can't remember a moment when you didn't know about her. And
just permeates everything.
Yeah, and I love that. And I love that she was permeating your consciousness, Congresswoman. To follow up to that, she grew up, she was born in 1924, so almost 100 years ago. She grew up in Brooklyn. She was the daughter of immigrants. But she had some really profound, and she had some really profound American and Caribbean influences on her. From the Caribbean, she had her own grandmother who taught her dignity and self-determination. She lived with her for 6 years. She also was taught through her father about Marcus Garvey. And then here in the United States, her father looked up to FDR. Ms. Chisholm picked up on Eleanor Roosevelt, and she met Eleanor Roosevelt as a young girl when she won a prize at school. So those were sort of her North Stars as she was coming of age intellectually, politically. And I want to follow up to that first question by asking you, who are the people who you keep calling on, or called on as a young person and then keep calling on?
I'm happy to start. And Congresswoman, we've spent a couple of bumping into each other, whether in the halls of Congress or just out in community. And I've just been so inspired by how the Congresswoman engages sort of authentically in telling her story and sharing her connections. And so I want to hurry up and answer so that I can sit back and listen to the Congresswoman. But I give this context in my response. I went to a historically Black college. I went to Jackson State University. I had college professors who were SNCC organizers, who were core organizers, who were active in the Macomb Voting Rights Project. These were the people who stood in front of my lecture halls every single day. And because they were activists in their communities by day, and professors, during the time that they were on campus, they sort of brought to all of us this sort of wholeness of activism, this wholeness of leadership, that you're never just one thing, but that you are all the things. And frankly, you have a responsibility to be all the things. And so it was not, I don't believe that I ever had a professor who didn't have a side hustle doing something. Wow. Right? The chair of my department was also the lead litigator in the Ayers case that was seeking to get equity for higher education schools that were traditionally Black schools, historically Black colleges in Mississippi, versus those who were white. Like, that was her everyday side hustle every time I engaged with her as a student. And so when you ask me, like, who are those that I call upon, I genuinely still call Dr. Mary D. Coleman. And she had I have taken my daughter back to Jackson State. She has spent time with Dr. Coleman. I was inspired by a professor, Leslie Burrell McLemore. He is today, at 84 years old, one of the first Black men ever to serve on the city council of his hometown of Clovis, Mississippi. But he also was the former mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. He was the former president of Jackson State University. He was the former chair of our political science department, and he taught me a lot of things. There's one thing I'll share with you, students, that he wrote on a chalkboard. Yes, I'm dating myself. but he wrote on a chalkboard in our classroom. He said, he wrote, "There's a thin line between scholarship and bullshit." He said, "Decide who you're gonna be." Those are the recollections, the memories, the reflections, and frankly, the aspirations that I still hold today, and I think very much or are very similar to those calls and demonstrations of leadership that Ms. Chisholm offered throughout her career, whether in the community, in her coalition building, or in the halls of Congress, continuing to bring people together to solve hard problems.
Now listen, I would follow the senator into any battle, but I hate to follow her on a microphone. I just love just being proximate to you and just porous to your wisdom and your experiences. Okay, so there are, I live by an ethos which is that the people closest to the pain should be the closest to the power, driving and informing the policy making. And I arrived at that shaped by three figures. The first is Dr. Maya Angelou. I am a survivor, and I believe the books save lives. And I know this to be true because Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings" saved my own. As a child, when I was experiencing the trauma of intrafamily abuse, when I read that book, it was the first time in my life that I knew I was not alone. And it helped me to shed some of the shame that was not mine to carry. It's where I first understood the power of representation. And something in me early on said, I want to do that for other people, where in my transparency, in my candor, in my storytelling and truth-telling, that others will similarly feel seen. The other figure that factors in prominently for me is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the reason why is I often say to my closest cohorts in Congress that we are right now writing the blueprint for someone else's survival. And so when I'm wondering how best to survive and weather turbulent times, in order to go forward, I always look back. We are still very much in the civil rights movement. And so I look often to the earlier chapters of this movement on what were the strategies. And in studying those movements, I think there's three elements that are essential to every movement. Imagination. So we talk a lot about the radical work, but you first need a radical dream. The second is strategy, which they were very nimble and innovative. And the third element, so you need imagination, strategy, and the third, and this is the hardest one, is stamina. So Dr. Maya Angelou, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and my mother certainly is the most formidable influence in my life. May she rest in peace and power. She held many jobs to take care of me. But the one that factors in my mind most prominently is that she was a tenants' rights organizer with the Urban League of Chicago. And that's where I really first came to appreciate the power of organizing and of movements. And then I promise this is the last person, but my grandfather pastored a storefront church on the south side of Chicago. And it was being proximate to him, not only did my leadership development in many ways begin in this small storefront church, but when people would get up to testify about the ways in which God had changed or improved their lives, I really appreciated, again, the power of personal testimony and storytelling. So I think those four, and just the confluence of the lessons they poured into me, but also that I was able to, extrapolate from their example, are what I draw from the most every day.
Thank you, both of you. And that direct connection with community also was a defining feature of Chisholm's first activism and then political career. And she started as an activist. She started as a tenants' rights activist. Mm-hmm. That was the first time she got involved. And then she got involved in community groups that were trying to elect a Negro judge from Brooklyn, because there weren't any black judges in New York. And then she became part of an insurgent political club. So my next question for you is, where did you come from when you got started in politics? And I think I know the bare bones of the answers, but I want to know, what was it that got you to politics?
You want me to start?
Change order. I like listening.
Okay. Well, my mother was a proud Democrat and a super voter. She took me with her to vote in every single election. And early on told me two things. One, to be black is a beautiful thing and a powerful thing and something you should be proud of. But you were being born into a struggle, and I have an expectation that you will do your part in that struggle, in the work of liberation for black people and all marginalized people. I was 8. So I need y'all to understand the responsibilities being placed on my little shoulders. Okay. So I wish I could tell you, there was this moment where I was just radicalized and I was like, yes, social. No, my mother was like, baby girl, this is the expectation. Okay. So there was that. And then again, because she talked to me early on about the reason why I vote is because, we are powerful. And the work of change is not just for people with a comma and a title after their name. So that sort of shaped for me early on that the work of democracy is symbiotic, it's partnership, it is cooperative. And then that just sort of set me on a trajectory of community building, movement building, and public service.
Just to interject, we were talking before we started, and I learned about Ms. Chisholm and found out that she ran for president, and I could too, and I affirmatively decided not to.
Yes. I asked her why. She said because it was too much work.
You told her?
Okay. Well, you're doing different work that's just as hard. Yeah.
But a more flexible schedule.
Yes, yeah.
Interestingly, I never thought about myself in the context of politics. When I think about the conversations with my mom and parents, I think back on those conversations being conversations of survival. Like, how are we going to pay the light bill next month? How are we going to make sure that, I have 2 older brothers. How are we going to make sure that, one of them can go on a field trip? My mother worked 3 jobs, mostly all at once. My father had heart disease, and so was disabled and couldn't work, and more often than not was in a hospital. For as long as I can remember. He died when I was 15 years old from heart disease. He had a heart transplant. He had gotten a heart from an 18-year-old who died in a motorcycle accident. He had 6 heart attacks. He had a stroke. So all of these things. And I think about my mom and what our conversations were like and how my life was shaped. And I think about it through this lens of just trying to make it from one day to the next. And when I went to college, as I shared with you, I was able to sort of learn more about the systems that perpetuated my family's pain and poverty. But most importantly, my professors were actually able to show me through their side hustles that I had power to do something about it. And so it wasn't necessarily the political power that they showed, though I was a political science major. It was the power of choosing to do hard things together. It was every experience that I had with those professors telling me of their stories of organizing and going to jail and still going to college and getting their degrees and what responsibility they felt to not be at other elite institutions, but to be at the elite institution that they were at that moment in time. And it was, once I graduated from college with the sort of totality of experiencing the pain of poverty as a young person, and as a young adult, understanding the systems that perpetuated it and my responsibility to be a part of changing it, I then spent 20 years in the labor movement, working for working men and women, being able to see real, live, everyday heroes do extraordinary things. To see, a group of home care workers in Los Angeles fight together, choose to stand together, to raise their wages in a context where they were, in a political context where they were seen as the lowest on the totem pole and the last to be paid. But to now know that they themselves chose to utilize their own power to raise the minimum wage in the city that didn't impact their wages. They were paid by the state. But then to take that victory and change the lives of 6 million Californians, because that was changing the lives of 6 million Californians was the only way for their life to change. Raising the minimum wage, having California be the first to make their minimum wage $15 an hour was the only way that they were going to be able to raise their wage to $15 an hour, right? And so seeing ordinary people do extraordinary things was my lesson in politics. Mm-hmm. It was seeing my mom work 3 jobs every single day. It was seeing my dad not know whether or not, his Medicare or Medicaid was going to cover his heart transplant. It was understanding how, my elite institution was being left out of the funding that it deserved to educate the hundreds of thousands of lives of those who would matriculate through those hallways. And it was seeing home care workers and nursing home workers every day choose to do extraordinary things, but knowing that their only way that they could do it was if they chose to do it together. To me, that's politics. Mm.
Yeah. Can I build on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just echoing that. Thank you so much. Because what you're illustrating here, majority of people do not give a damn about politics, but they do care about their lives. And they're not often making the correlation with the state of their lives and policy. So when people say, I'm not into politics, and we always say, well, politics is really into you. Because quite literally, every decision of your life is being informed by something codified in a budget or in a law. And I would say also being raised as an only child, just my mother and I, that we often felt it was just she and I sort of versus the world. And it usually takes a child to become an adult to see the humanity of their parent beyond their parental role. Mm. But because it was just me and my mom, I was there for heartbreaks. I was there for hardship. We were each other's best friends. And I remember being what we called a latchkey kid, home alone, as early as 5 or 6, and my mother saying, do not tell anyone you were home alone. They will take you away from me. Yeah. but she couldn't afford childcare. I remember my mother being crippled by the pain of uterine fibroids. And now I have the verbiage to know when she was going to our healthcare system that she was being gaslit and her pain was being delegitimized. But all I knew is that she was experiencing debilitating pain and then forced into a radical hysterectomy at still a very young age, and then went back to work too quickly because she didn't have paid leave, and collapsed on the street and was picked up, by an ambulance. I remember the indignity of her coming home and saying there was a white man that she had trained for his job, and he was promoted over her and paid more than her. So I didn't have the verbiage at that time to understand pay equity, or childcare, or health care, or that housing is dignity and we deserve to live in a home where the lights in the stairwell weren't always out and the elevator always broken and roaches around us. So most people don't care about politics, but they are experts on their lives. But each of those decisions is informed by policy, and I do think early in my life I was ultimately able to make that correlation and to attribute most of that to federal policy. So.
Politics is survival. A politics of survival, and politics is survival. Initially, when going back to Chisholm, there are so many connections between the issues that you identified, the specific issues you identified, and also the fact that she was human. And I like to say it's important to show that she was human and not just this abstract hero, because we want the heroes of the future to understand that it's okay to be human. Mm-hmm. And so this is all of you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm glad we're leaning into some of these early foundation things, because we can talk about the horse races going on in Congress in electoral politics, but you don't always get to talk to people who are in politics because of these fundamental human concerns. And so I want to lean into those a little bit more and start to connect them to what actually happens in these political organizations and structures. To start with, initially in her career, Ms. Chisholm was looking at minimum wage protections for domestic workers. Her second term on Capitol Hill, she got a universal child care bill through both houses of Congress and to Nixon's desk. He vetoed. But imagine what kind of world we would be living in if that was a reality. Your world would have been very different growing up. I know that, Congresswoman, you held elected office before getting to Congress. I know, Senator, you were in leadership in labor organizations before getting to Capitol Hill. What were the things happening in those initial stages of your career that then you brought to bear once you got to office? And this is career advice for
How did you apply all that? You were being prepared and you didn't know you were being prepared.
Well, look, I was being prepared, 100%. I mean, it is.
And I just want to add, she was also at Emily's List, so she was doing the work of recruitment and training and supporting women in elected office. But I would venture to guess that when they came to you and said, "It's your turn now," that you might have been a bit of a cliche of the candidates that you worked actively to recruit.
Indeed. Look,
Yes.
So I'll tell you a quick
I.
story for sure. Senator Feinstein passed late on a Thursday night. My family and I were traveling to Aspen on behalf of Emily's List to do some fundraising for our candidates. And we are at a layover in Chicago when it is sort of all over the news and had been reported that Senator Feinstein had passed, and indeed Governor Newsom had to appoint her successor. I am literally in the airport talking to Barbara Lee about how I think she could play getting this appointment as the president of Emily's List. And I land in Aspen, and this begins a essentially 48-hour pursuit of me trying to figure out just how prepared I am, just how prepared I am. And I wind up agreeing to accept the governor's appointment on Sunday morning. My family and I were flying back to Washington. We land at midnight, and the whole world knows that I have now, I'm about to be appointed to the United States Senate. My mother found out at the same time everybody else did.
Ooh, trouble.
Right. Right?
Ooh, trouble.
I had one day to transition out of an organization that I had led for 2 years, that I had raised well over $100 million to support women running for office all over the country. I had built relationship, invested personal capital in relationship with every candidate that we had worked, and I had 24 hours before I was sworn into the United States Senate on Tuesday, October 3rd at 9:30 a.m. And you asked the question about like what was happening in my life at that time, what was happening in the environment at that time relative to sort of stepping into this role of public service. It was a whirlwind. Like, I don't even remember the moment, honestly, of what was happening. What I know is, and what I believe, and I will go so far as to say what I know. What I know is I was the right person at the right time, doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
I was and so the Dobbs decision had happened. And there was a need to continue to have a Black woman. I was the only Black woman in the Senate during the time of my service. There was a need to have a Black woman's voice at the table in discussions about how the Democratic caucus was going to address Dobbs. We could not walk away from, as a caucus, the pursuit of true voting rights and ensuring that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act was continued to be a live discussion in the Senate. And so being able to join Senator Warnock and Senator Durbin here, just on the Judiciary Committee to get that, make sure that those conversations continued. One of the most important things that was happening, and I think we see it happening today, is an absolute assault on our judicial system. Mm-hmm. And I was able to, in my 14 months of service, get 3 district court judges appointed and confirmed. And, there were judges' vacancies that have, sort of sat unfilled for years. Mm-hmm. But I knew that I had to be a part of accomplishing that work on behalf of the 40 million Californians, but also, in preparation for where we find ourselves as a nation today relative to the attack on our judicial system. And so there was a lot that was happening. And I am convinced that I was for every role that I had had prior to being in the Senate, I was prepared to step into that seat, into that appointment, and clear enough in who I am to make a conscious decision not to run for it again.
Yeah. I think she'll build on that later. Well, I just want to say what the senator illustrates here, because I do get a lot of young people that will ask me, what's your advice? I want to run for office one day. What should I do? And what I always say to them is, follow the work.
Get to work.
follow the work. It's not about chasing a title or a position. Like, I don't want to, there's nothing wrong with having a crystallized plan for your life. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious. There's nothing wrong with being aspirational. There's nothing wrong with being strategic. But I do worry that if people are more focused on the position, that dilutes the power and the impact of what they can actually do in the role, because they'll always be seeking a position. So as I said, I realized the source of a lot of the inequities, disparities, and injustices that we were navigating as a family was about the residual aftermath of federal policy. So I knew I wanted to get to the root cause. I was just following the work. I didn't know what shape or form that would take. I'm joined here today by an incredible member of my team. His name is Eddie Rupia. He's in the back there. I was an aide for 16 years. So I want to lift that up, because people will think the only way that you can civically engage is to run for office or to vote. And there are so many things in between that. Yeah. And I found great reward, meaning, and purpose in being the person behind the person. I was the cliche, having done the work of recruiting and training women to run, that when they came to me, I too said, not I, because I loved being the person behind the person. But the other thing with women is that we will sort of say, I need one more thing. We never really fully stand 10 toes down on our qualifications and the confluence of our lived and professional and what we bring. And that is a little bit of our, a lot of it, how we've been impacted by the patriarchy, this idea. So this is why you'll have like an 18-year-old young man that will challenge an incumbent who hasn't worked on a campaign, hasn't served on any nonprofit, hasn't done any volunteer work, but he'll feel pretty bossed up that he can take that person on and win. Mm-hmm. And then you'll go to a woman who's been active in nonprofit, community, done the work in community. Women generally run on cause and mission. Men, I'm so sorry, y'all. I know it's not true for anybody in this room, but tend to run on resume. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I just take all this full circle to say, thank you for just following the work. And then because of everything you had done in advance, it was an example of sort of preparation meeting opportunity, mm-hmm. even though you were not calculatedly mm-hmm. preparing for anything, mm-hmm. but you were still well positioned. So I hope you all will just keep that in mind. Think about the impact you seek to make and then work backwards.
Representative Pressley, the senator was able to share a little bit about what it's like to walk into Capitol Hill. Shirley Chisholm was a representative, 12th District of New York, Brooklyn, got to Capitol Hill in 1969. You get there in 2019. What happened? She said, some people looked at me like I was someone coming out of the moon. She said that she was such a strange person to be present there. Several decades later, what did you do when you got to Capitol Hill? And please tell us about your office.
Okay. So there were, I find unprecedented is the word that we've been using, often in the last at least almost 7 years that I've been in Congress. I don't know about y'all, I'm ready for some precedented times, but so I came in the 116th Congress. You should know there have been a little over 12,000 people to serve in the history of Congress, and to date, only 57 Black women. And Congresswoman Chisholm was a founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus. She was a founding member of many organizations, National Organization of Women, leader on the ERA, so many other things. But I think that founding group of the CBC was only 8 members. Mm-hmm.
Congressional Select Committee, actually 7, if you don't.
Oh, right, because it was named that at first, okay. Yeah. So I come into Congress in the midst of I governed during a partial government shutdown. Donald Trump is the occupant of the White House. I will never call him the president. He is unfit for that title. But Donald Trump is the, I'm so glad y'all clapped and didn't say, well, that's not very bipartisan.
Boy.
Where is there a party to be bipartisan with? I just see a cult of cowards, complicit in wholesale harm. I'm so sorry. But anyway, so I digress, like Aquarians tend to do. Okay, so shout out to all the Aquarians. So Donald Trump is the occupant of the White House. There's a partial government shutdown. I come in with a historic number of electoral firsts. This closest cohort of girlfriends, who grew close because we were really trauma bonding, truthfully. There is an extraordinary blessing in being a first, and also with it brings tremendous responsibility. And myself, Representative Omar, Representative Tlaib, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, we were all firsts for different reasons. And for that reason, we had been asked to do a number of interviews together. And after one of those interviews, we took a photo together. The journalist noted behind us were these paintings of white men mostly, and thought it an interesting contrast. We took this photo and we posted it, and before Representative Ocasio-Cortez posted it, she said, what should I hashtag this? And I don't know who said it, but I think it was me, but somebody said, it was probably me because I'm the eldest one in the group. I'm like the auntie of the group. So, so you're always trying to seem like you relate to the younger folk. So I said, just call it like squad goals, because that was like what they were doing on social media at the time. And so that image went viral, and I think it went viral because the representation was resonant to so many people, particularly against the contrast of the paintings behind us. So when I came in, I certainly did not anticipate, I didn't fully grasp that being in Congress was a national role, that it was high profile. I had no idea the scrutiny that I would be under, and that my closest cohorts in that freshman class in the 116th, this idea of a squad would be something that, as beautiful as it was, would be something that would be weaponized, and what we would be navigating. So I had no idea what I was walking into. I was not new to governing, sort of like a small I institutionalist. I was an aide for 16 years, 4 in the House, 11 in the Senate, coming from a municipal body for 8 years. So it was nothing that I expected, but that I do believe I was prepared for. Now, in terms of Congresswoman Chisholm, in freshman orientation, which is where I met Representative Tlaib, Omar, and Ocasio-Cortez, Alex and I had met once before, so it was my second time meeting her, but everyone else, it was my first time meeting them at freshman orientation. And in freshman orientation, you were also assigned your office, and it's determined by a lottery. So the lottery was picked on the day that would have been Shirley Chisholm's 92nd or 95th birthday? No, 92nd.
Probably 90th. Probably 90th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was her heavenly birthday, whatever year it would have been. It was her heavenly birthday. And so we go up to pick our numbers for the lottery, and I'm going up there. I am being very boisterous about this. It is Shirley's birthday. I know I'm about to get a good number. I'm about to get the best office. And my chief of staff had researched what used to be Shirley Chisholm's office, where she had this all female staff, and I knew the office, Longworth 1108. And so I go and I pick my number. It is a crappy number, y'all. And I feel a type of way. But I begin to hatch my plan. So I go to this office, and I basically squat in there. And the other freshman members are coming that have higher lottery numbers than me. And they're coming in, and I'm telling them, I found a dead mouse in here. There's a private bathroom, true enough, but the handle sticks. And I'm just like, I'm manufacturing problems with this office. But despite my best attempts to sabotage in order to get the office, I still didn't get it. It went to a congresswoman named Katie Hill. And several days later, we were together, and she said, look, knowing your love of Congresswoman Chisholm, the formidable role she's played in your life, the fact that you were the first person of color, first Black woman to represent the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the House, I will swap offices. And so we switched. Yeah, so it was incredible to have the mojo of Congresswoman Chisholm for my first 2 terms in Longworth 1108. I've since moved to Cannon. But I would often stand at her, the windows behind her desk and, wonder, did she look out reflectively, having a moment of introspection about a vote or a meeting or something like that. So it was a very full circle.
I love that story. It is similarly, but very different in the United States Senate. Like, there's no lottery. Like, there's no sense of little d democracy.
Okay.
It is, there's only 2 offices in the Senate that actually fit the size of the staff that California senators are allocated. So you only have the option of Hart first floor or Hart third floor. That is it. And I had the opportunity to, I was the freshman, and the freshman always gets the first floor office, the Hart first floor office. And I remember walking into that office understanding that this was, that I was only the 3rd woman ever, Black woman ever, to serve in the United States Senate. Out of the 12,000 in history elected to serve in Congress, more than 2006 at the time, have been members elected or appointed to serve in the United States Senate. And I was only the 3rd. Vice President Harris before me, and your very own Chicagoan. Your very own Chicagoan.
Yeah. So there's only been 5.
Yeah.
So
now
there's 5 in all of history.
There's only been 5 in all of history. But to know that I stood in the same office, looked out the same windows, could appreciate the similar difficulties. It is. There's a lot of hype that gets added to being the first or being the only, and sort of the responsibility that comes with that doesn't often get talked about. But it's not a reason to not. If anything, I think the responsibility that goes along with it is a reason to actually do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, I've been told that I need to stop asking my own questions and let some other people ask questions. I want to put out there the big first that Shirley Chisholm undertook, which was running for president. Mm-hmm. And she's the first Black person to run for a major party nomination, first woman to run for for the Democratic Party's nomination. And talk about having a little bit of swagger. She just did it.
She did.
She didn't ask anyone's permission. She just did it. And so I just want to put that out there, that was a culmination of so much of what the senator and the congresswoman have been discussing. And I also want to encourage you to ask about presidential politics, what it takes to run for president, because these are folks who have been up close with the people who have done so. So I think I will be gracious and not too greedy, and invite especially students in the audience to ask some of your own questions. And if nobody stands up, I'll just keep asking questions.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna address how I know best. So I'm just gonna say hello, Queens.
Back at you.
Thank you so much for the honor of being here. While I am a student, I'm in a master's program, so I've been through the fire a little bit. But I'm currently serving after 7 years as the National Youth Co-Chair of NCOBRA. So I've reinvented it to young people of NCOBRA because I consider myself a young adult. But I say all that to say, Representative Pressley, I know that you have recently taken over spearheading Bill H.R. 40 with our late representatives, Conyers and Sheila Lee Jackson. And so I first and foremost just want to say, humbly, thank you for that. It came as a surprise to me, like I said, who's been in the reparations work for almost a decade, and not realizing that we had someone right in our backyard who was willing to take on the charge. And so I think that speaks to the encouragement that I have to keep going, to know that when I least expect it, there will be people at the top who will take over. So I 100% appreciate that. My question is, though, in this climate, how should someone like myself proceed, given the history of the United States and how they deal with the youngest of our population when they are fighting for liberation and liberty and justice for all? How should someone like myself, who is living in Chicago and also works with a colleague, Sister Miranda X, my name is Sister Lily X, and she runs the Chicago chapter of NCOBRA as a young person. So how do we stay safe? How do we push forward H.R. 40? How do we maybe one day have the chance to serve in Congress without things happening beforehand in this current political climate that would stop us from being in your seat or the other sister's seat?
Thank you.
So I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you asking, is your question something like reparations could seem very unlikely given the climate that we're in, and so how to keep advancing that, or why continue to do that work? Is that the question?
In a nutshell.
And to stay safe while
In a
doing it?
nutshell, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. First, I just want to say that I was also surprised to be picking up the mantle of H.R. 40. It was a great honor. Erica Lee Carter, who is the daughter of Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee, who died suddenly from pancreatic cancer, she finished out her mother's term. And tragically, the district has now lost who was elected to that seat in Sylvester Turner. And so it has just been a very, very, very challenging time. But Erica Lee Carter, in finishing out her mother's term, said that she had conferred with the Congresswoman's staff and talked to family, and they felt strongly, if I would say yes, that they would hope I would consider taking it on. And I did so because in one of my last correspondences with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, when she was still in the hospital fighting for her life, she said to me, never stop fighting for our priorities, never give up. And so I agreed to take on H.R. 40. And when I reintroduced it, and of course this has been for several decades now, starting with Congressman John Conyers, then Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, now it is with me. And people said, why in this moment, when we have a 50-year precedent of affirmative action in higher ed that has been undone, when we have attacks on Brown versus Board of Education, the dismantling of Department of Education, when we have an active dismantling of diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we have books being banned by Black authors and that tell Black stories, why would you reintroduce H.R. 40 reparations? That's exactly why I reintroduced H.R. 40 reparations. We find ourselves in a moment of anti-Blackness on steroids. So what is the antidote to anti-Blackness? Pro-Blackness. And I'm just a believer that if we can legislate hurt and harm, and again, every harm done to Black people or any marginalized group is one that was legislated, is one that was codified, then the path to healing and that reparative work, if you can legislate hurt and harm, you can legislate equity, you can legislate healing, you can legislate justice. And we are making strides. There are reparations task force, including in the city of Boston, that are growing throughout the country. There is tremendous momentum that is a testament to advocates and activists in this space for all these many decades who've sojourned on. Some places are already actively and successively offering some form of redress. And again, we do have a blueprint in the work of what we've seen with survivors of Japanese internment camps, or the work of Truth and Reconciliation, which is still ongoing, but with indigenous communities. So I would say keep going, be encouraged. As I said, every great movement has imagination, strategy, and stamina. And while we're doing the work of blunting the harms of this hostile administration, this active government takeover, we have to continue to advance an affirmative vision. We have to keep a North Star. So I'm not adult. I understand the legislative process, that we need Republicans in order to move legislation. But I think it's important to keep it up so that we do not allow that momentum to wane, because we are making progress. Yeah, so stay encouraged. The safety piece, I'm working on that,
We follow your lead.
Yeah, I'm working on that, on the safety piece, yeah.
Hello, my name is Erin Hernandez. I'm a Harris student here at UChicago, and I also work part-time as a legislative coordinator for the Cook County Office of the President, and we keep getting reports of executive orders and how it's affecting our residents. And I guess my question is there a plan to kind of work against all the harm that has been done previously by the Trump administration and currently being done and is going to continue to be done for the next 4 years, to be able to keep programs going, like housing programs, education programs, healthcare programs, because I know those are the big areas, and in addition to a lot of them that are getting hit.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the question, and as I said, we find ourselves in an unprecedented moment. We've never experienced anything like this, and even though it was all forecasted in Project 2025, which was never a blueprint, it was always a playbook, and so we see them playing that out in real time. The thing about executive orders is that they're not law simply because he signs it. The problem is that while we are active in our defensive strategy of litigation first, and we're winning most of those cases, it takes time. And so we all feel a sense of urgency and things are very dire, and so you want an urgent prescriptive response. But our best defensive strategy is the courts, because most of what is happening by this administration is lawless. And the problem is, even if those executive orders are not law, people believe they are, and so it has the chilling effect anyway. And so that is problematic. So that's why I really want to encourage people to be, the first thing you can do is be well informed, be thoughtful about your digital literacy in a climate of dis and misinformation, and make sure your circle of influence, whether that's the people you work with, worship with, live with, study group with, your chat groups, make sure people have active information, because a lot of people are changing how they move and how they live their lives based on the chilling effect of things that are not law, So you have to make sure it's accurate. And then as far as how do we keep programs and things going, because, for example, even if Trump, because it's only through an act of Congress can you dismantle an agency. So them randomly standing up this so-called Department of Government Efficiency, you can't just randomly stand up agencies. Neither can you dissolve federal departments or agencies. That requires an act of Congress. But because he does not believe in a co-equal branch of government, separation of powers, Congress's power of the purse, all of these things, that's why we say we're in a constitutional crisis. But what we know is, even if he can't lawfully dismantle the Department of Education or the Department of Housing and Urban Development, if you are indiscriminately laying off thousands of people, you are gutting and eroding them. So even if it still exists, the integrity has been compromised. So we need, states and municipalities are going to have to stand in the gap, but they will not be able, I just want to level with you as a trusted voice, they will not be able to, meet all of these fiscal demands. because it's just impossible to make up that gap. But it is going to require more from our municipal electeds and from our state electeds. But just know that just as scary as these executive actions are, they are mostly unlawful. And our best defensive strategy is litigation, and we are winning in the courts. And I want to say public outcry. You know, the reason why not only do we have a judge on our side, but why Trump reversed course on those federal freezes is because there was public outcry. So, you know, what they want you to be, they're anti-woke because they want you to be asleep. They want you to be lulled. They do. They want you to be lulled into a state of ignorance, into a state of indifference, and to a state of inaction. That's what they want. Their strategy is to shock and awe and overwhelm you into a depressive and oppressive state. That is the goal of authoritarianism. And so I need everyone to stay woke. I need you to stay vigilant. And we have to continue to meet this chaos with community and to meet this dictator with defiance.
Thank you. Okay. Now, we want to get to as many questions as possible, so I think let's have a couple of folks ask questions.
Have them all, yeah.
I
think this
and then we'll
hopefully
get to more that way. So a couple people now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Taryn. I'm a second year at the college. First of all, thank you so much for such an amazing event. I thought it was really interesting how you mentioned that women are typically more mission-driven in running for office, but they may feel hesitant or less confident to actually run. I was wondering, what are some ways that you believe that structural barriers can be decreased to encourage more women to run for office? And specifically, Senator Butler, what was your work at Emily's List like, and your favorite initiatives that you've done?
I told her, I said, this question is going to be for you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
You can answer both of those.
Thank you so much for the question, Taryn. Let me get, I think the moderator wants to get a couple, but I'll definitely come back to it,
Let's
Taryn.
get one more in there.
We're elders, and we don't have a question. We have a point, historical.
That involves Shirley Chisholm.
Yes, ma'am.
We were at the Democratic Convention
In 1982.
and
at that time, we were with the Harold Washington delegation. We're Chicagoans from the South Side.
Yes, ma'am.
And we know you have to fight. And you can't be scared. As we say in Chicago, if you're scared, stay home. And at the time, in the early 80s, the women's movement had really been exerting pressure on the national Democrats for women, to have more women represented.
and they went around and they interviewed various women for vice president. And they didn't interview Shirley Chisholm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So as delegates, we get to San Francisco and we find out,
they sent Bella Abzug to talk to us. They sent Bella Abzug to talk to us because we had organized the women of color at the convention. And she said, oh, you need to be very grateful that we're going to nominate a woman.
And so we said, okay, all the allies leave and the colored girls stay right here. And we came up with a strategy. So
we took some mimeograph paper and we wrote, vote for Shirley on the first vote for vice president. We cut them up
and pass them out. We worked the floor. And then the next thing, what happened?
And then they started to call the roll. And they said, Alabama.
The great state of Alabama.
And they
and
said,
a sister steps over.
Eddie,
wait a minute,
white boy.
wait a minute.
Come over here.
They were saying, wait a minute.
And no, that was afterwards. Then the white boy said,
Eddie.
the great state of Alabama. And a sister steps up and says, cast our vote for Shirley Chisholm. Then, pandemonium. pandemonium broke out.
They had to throw the convention to the state of California
Right.
because women were voting for Shirley Chisholm.
And so, yeah.
First of all, thank these
That's
women.
awesome.
Thank these women warriors here.
Stand up.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Woo!
That's awesome.
And
Hey,
next-
Taryn, I think the answer to your question is exactly what you just saw. The structural barriers will always exist, right? The biggest one that Emily's List was built to tackle was money.
We were members in the 80s.
There you go, Taryn. You have real life examples right here from your city, from your town, to ask and engage this question. I would invite you to make sure you talk to these ladies before they leave. And we've got to make sure that as women continue to run for office, really at levels now never seen before, that we adapt our thinking and our strategies to ensure that we're taking into consideration the mis and disinformation of the digital age. Women are much more likely to be targets of mis and disinformation online than their male counterparts. And it is some of the most, it's beyond the she didn't pay her taxes, or she did not, had a nanny that she didn't pay employment. It's beyond that. We all have seen some of the disgraceful and disgusting things that happen to women that don't happen to men online. And so I think we need to make sure that we're thinking about, as we think about the structural challenges of fundraising, the networks that we build differently than men. It's not that we don't have them, we build our networks differently. And then because we build them differently, we devalue them. Because we may not know the owner of the local car dealership. We know his wife and the 5 friends that actually make the car dealership run. But we devalue our network. And so we need to appreciate differently how we build our networks. And we need to make sure that we are taking into consideration technology and where we are in this space and time, and think about that as a different kind of barrier. I just wanted to speak to that.
No,
quickly.
thank you for that.
Yeah, 2 or 3 more. We're trying to get to.
I don't know how I'm gonna follow that, but this question's for Senator or Congressperson Pressley. I think I already have a sense of your answer, Senator Butler, when you said you didn't want to run for office again. But first and foremost, I want to thank you for signing on to the release of the political prisoner, Mahmoud Khalil, and of our sister who just got took in, Rumesa. And I want to talk, you talked a bit about Project 2025 as a playbook. I just got back from 3 months in Mexico. And I want to say there's a woman down there who had an excellent playbook and what I think can be copied here in the U.S. They split from their liberal party as progressives, and they formed their own coalition, bringing together different parties all across the country. And what do you know? They've had amazing success. She has something like a 70-80% approval rating, some of the highest approval ratings in the world. I wanted to ask, what is the playbook moving forward? As a Chicano, as a Mexican, my community has been under attack since Inauguration Day and from before, from the past presidency, which is a shameful thing, I have to say. So I just wanted to know what the game plan is for the squad. I used to want to run for office, and part of the reason why I don't want to anymore is because of the failures that I've had to see, which, no offense to you or any of the squad members, but, it's hard to watch, especially when my community's experienced such violence by what I would call the modern day Gestapo. So yeah, what's the playbook moving forward? I'd love to know your answer.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Hill. I'm a Chicago native and a partner of the institution. I work in international affairs here in Chicago. I recently founded a nonprofit geared towards engaging young people civically and through creative endeavors. My question is a very simple one. What's something that keeps you anchored in all of the work that you do? And you mentioned, I think Congresswoman, you mentioned following the work, and I think that's a really solid piece of advice, but what's something that keeps you moving forward?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we just want to do all of them.
Yeah, sure.
Because
it's really low. Hi, I'm Matt. Thanks. I'm a medical student and also a student of public policy here at the university. I'm also an alumnus of Tufts University in the Boston area, Congresswoman, and I know you've spoken out about the kidnapping that happened earlier this week, and we had a question kind of related to that already. But I'm specifically curious if you and Senator Butler are also a Californian, so thank you for your service. Funny coincidence. But curious if you can weigh in on what we as students should be doing to protect each other. I think here at University of Chicago, they love to talk about institutional neutrality, which means that they've basically said nothing. And I think a lot of people here feel very unsafe, especially our international classmates. And I also just broadly, higher ed is in a crisis, and it's a scary place to be, and would just love to hear from the two of you what we can do to fight back in a way that protects our status and protects people from being deported from this country. Thank you.
Okay. You want to hear
Last
them all?
question.
Okay, one more.
Good afternoon. Firstly, Dr. Curwood, Rep. Pressley, and Senator Butler, thank you for taking the time to even engage in us today, and also thank you for your service. My name is Adal Regis. I've actually worked for two of your colleagues, Congressman Pressley. Anita Lowy, that was my boss back in New York, who, as you know, passed away. Just passed away. And more recently—
First woman to chair the Appropriations Committee.
Yep, first woman to break that barrier. And the second person, Congressman Robin Kelly,
Illinois.
who took me in when I moved to Chicago. Also important to mention, I'm a Harris graduate. And one last thing, I also want to thank you. I'm of Haitian descent. Thank you for being part of the Haitian caucus, for stepping up, and for having a heart for the Haitian people. We see you, we appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.
My question is very simple. As you can see, the administration or regime, whatever we want to call it, is not just carefully dismantling the institutions, whether it's academic or illegal or so on, but it's also systematically targeting the Democratic Party's political infrastructure. We see Act Blue imploding, which is going to make it a little bit harder to fundraise. We see that they're targeting sanctuary cities, right, sending Pam Bondi to kind of push some of our reps in the defense. And obviously they're gambling big time on the next midterm, which arguably will probably be the most important midterm in American history. So my question is, what is our game plan in terms of organizing effectively? And we're not just talking about keyboard warrior, well, which I know that's not what you're doing digitally, but what is the most effective ways with all of these attacks on our political infrastructure for us to be able to organize effectively and efficiently? Thank you.
Let's work backwards. Do you want to start there? Just
I would thank you so much
background?
for the question. I think the last two actually I'd like to respond to together, because what we do now is what we will do for the midterms. And the ways in which we decide to stand up for our brothers and sisters, whether they were born here or speak the same language, should matter not. Frankly, because what we need to accomplish in 2026 is the same. The dismantling of institutions, the attacks on individuals and communities, all we have an opportunity in front of us to organize, to protect each other today, and to make a stand for the country in 2026. So when you ask, what do I think that students can do? What do I think that we should be doing as activists and organizers in our communities right now? I think we've got to do what we know how to do. And everybody's got a role to play. I told you all I grew up in the South, and one of the things that you do when you grow up in the South a lot is go to church. Not to say that it doesn't happen anywhere else. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. And it is often said that in the Bible there are lots of different ways for people to worship. There are opportunities to sing, there are opportunities to blow the horn, there are opportunities to walk around the wall, there are opportunities to carry life. Everybody has a role to play because there's a role for everybody. And so when we think about the moment that we are in right now, I want to make sure to say to us all here the same lesson that I learned way back then, that is that everybody has something to do because there's something for everybody to do. I appreciate the keyboard warriors who make sure that we are creating the kinds of chat groups that enable our student bodies to be able to communicate with each other. And I would encourage actually to utilize that as a tool for your own safety, but also to create community, because it's easy to take one person in the middle of the night and nobody know. But when what I have seen of this generation of activists is the effectiveness of those 1982 mimeograph papers and 1992 phone trees. You all can create we can make a heck of a lot of noise when we stay connected and we organize and engage. And I think that there are ways that we can utilize today's technology to be able to do that. And emails don't put votes in the ballot box. Just as an organizer, that is what I was trained to do. Emails alone do not put votes in the ballot box. And so as we are building these virtual communities, think intentionally about how we bring those communities together to start to talk about what it is that we expect out of people who are running in 2026. Don't start the conversation now as to who you like. Start the conversation in the place of that radical imagination. What do I expect out of whoever is running in 2026 or 2028 or whenever? What do I expect out of them? And then over the next 2 years, bring those communities together to make sure that you are engaging consistently and communicating that set of expectations. That is the essence of organizing. It's in addition to the clipboard and the check in the box, right? It is about being clear about your why, because why gets you to the ballot box. What are you going there for?
Yes,
gets you to the ballot box. And so many people stay home in 2024 because they didn't have a clear articulation or clear set of clearly articulated expectations. They didn't have a why that moved them. And I think now we have an opportunity to re-galvanize around that why. As we build community and talk to people that we may never have spoken to before this crisis in front of us this moment, to actually build movement and momentum towards 2026. And so I think you actually have both an opportunity and a crisis that can actually help to be an answer for moving forward.
Brilliant. Thank you. The last word, Congresswoman Pressley.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm not sure what to do here because they said we're already 5 minutes over. And I don't want anyone to feel that they asked a question that wasn't answered. So I don't know if we'll be staying a couple of minutes afterwards and I can speak with people. But I'll try to just offer some top line thoughts here. One, we cannot practice othering and scarcity mindset. So if you are African American and you don't see and feel a stakeholder in what is happening in Haiti, but you believe that Black Lives Matter, that's globally, right? If you are an immigrant who has attained your citizenship, but you feel that you are better than those that are asylum seekers or temporary protected status or DED, that is, perpetuating this othering mindset. We have to see and feel a stakehold in each other's humanity and each other's rights. If you distance yourself from the fight for police reform, for the need to restore voting rights, from reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, if you distance yourself from the fight for the humanity of the LGBTQ plus community and the trans community in particular, that is why we're in this situation now, because the other side very effectively perpetuated othering and scarcity mindset. So in this moment, again, what is the antidote to chaos? It is community. I'm using as a reference point in this moment the closest analog, which is the pandemic. It was wholesale indiscriminate harm. This harm is very discriminate. It's very pointed. It's very precise, but it's wholesale. And there was infrastructure that we stood up, mutual aid, community that emerged, things that happened that had never happened before because we had been told they never could, but they did. So we have to learn from that and replicate those things in this moment. And when it comes to elected leaders, Stacey Abrams, a dear friend of both of ours, once said that we don't elect saviors, we elect partners. And those words have never left me. So part of partnership is accountability. So hold your elected officials accountable. But I also want to appeal to you. When an elected official does something that you align with, affirm that. Because if you don't affirm that, they are not emboldened and fortified to continue to take stances that in this climate and culture endanger us, truthfully. So, I think it is important to hold us accountable. We are not saviors. We are partners, and part of partnership is accountability. But when we do something that you do agree with, affirm that, lift that up, because not only does that further embolden that elected, but it emboldens everyone else around them that's taking note of what is the response. And it's the same way that you agitate. If how you agitate is online, is with an email, is with a letter, is, that's the same way, to affirm. And then as I close, I want to speak to this, and and anyone who felt I did not get to your question, particularly in talking about Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeysa Ozturk, again, that is my constituent. Everyone has to feel a stakehold in their lives. This is a 5-alarm fire. This is an assault on due process. This is an assault on free speech. So that could happen to anyone. The whole point of our college campuses is to be a place of debate and discourse and to build up global citizenry. And so when people are being disappeared from society, who there's no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing, they're being denied due process in any court proceeding, quite literally just being kidnapped in broad daylight on the street. You cannot be silent because you were complicit in that act, in that violent act, and you create an ecosystem where more of that can occur. This is a dictator that must be met with defiance. So we all have to see a stakehold in one another. And then finally, while you were doing this radical work, do not erase your own humanity. You have to keep your own humanity. So please be intentional about informing and preserving your own joy. To answer this young lady's question about sort of what's keeping us in this moment. For me, I find joy in community. I find joy with my family. And also the thing that I derive the most joy and strength from is poetry. That is, I read Nikki Giovanni, Audre Lorde, Maya Angelou, Sonia Sanchez, Pablo Neruda, probably every day. So be thoughtful about that. And then to close with what the senator offered around everyone has something to do, what we're experiencing is so overwhelming that can stifle what you do because you're like, it's all so big, what can I really do? Not everyone is gonna lead the resistance march. Some people will pick up a microphone. Some people are gonna pick up a paintbrush. Some people are gonna pick up a pen. Some people are gonna work the text system for the microphone. Some people are gonna pack the lunches for the people that are in the march. Some people are gonna hold the signs, and some people are gonna paint the signs for the people holding them. So I would just ask all of you to be thoughtful about what is the unique gift that you can bring to this movement in this moment, because you are sorely needed. And the only way we're going to get through the other side is through active resistance and agitation, and it's through community.
Thank you. I think I speak on behalf of this entire room when I say we are so grateful to have heard all of these observations from you in this short amount of time. I wish we had several more hours. Please thank our participants one more time.
Thank you, doctor. And read her